Hello. So today I'm going to do something that I've kind of tried to do before, but it did not work. I'm going to take you on a tour through my most recently finished sketchbook. This is the 11th sketchbook that I've finished to about completion, and I'm just gonna have a little walk through it today and tell you about some of the things. This is a version of the sketchbook that hasn't been filled. I have a couple in backup. So it's an A6, 105mm by 148mm, 192 pages at 120 GSM ivory paper. I don't know a lot about paper, so I can't really tell you whether or not this is good. I know that it doesn't handle watercolors or paint the absolute best, but fuck knows I'm gonna paint in it if I want to anyway. So it's by Icon, which I think is a relatively cheap brand in Britain and Ireland, and it's by Premier. Okay, that actually makes some sense. So I'm gonna just quickly walk you through my sketchbook and just tell you about some of the things that I'm doing. So first things first, I always put contact information in the front of my sketchbooks because I don't know if other people are like this, but I kind of think of my sketchbooks as being a form of diary in a way. Even if it's just images, I do a lot of writing in my sketchbooks. Sometimes I kind of plan through poems or story ideas in sketchbooks because it's loose paper. But I really don't want to lose my sketchbook, so I always put contact information so that if it's found somewhere, people can easily contact me and give it back to me because I want it back. As I said, it's my 11th completed sketchbook, and I say completed loosely. There's like a few pages that are empty, or there's left pages that are empty, and I just I would consider it finished. I don't really like drawing on left pages, which is something I am actively trying to get over in my current sketchbook, but hey, it's a progress. So this sketchbook was started on the 6th of January this year, which is actually Sherlock Holmes' birthday, disputedly, and then I finished it on the 3rd of June this year. I've already started another sketchbook, and it's actually, I usually draw on a standard size of A6, but the current one that I'm using at the moment is the same brand, but is an A5. I just wanted to try using a larger one. I've used a larger one in the past, and I'm enjoying it. So another thing about these sketchbooks that I don't like is they have this weird seam here, which makes the first pages kind of awkward and uncomfortable, and they always end up ripping. It actually ripped in the back of this one. I can't remember if I ripped it on purpose or not, because it kind of makes the sketchbook a little bit stiff, so I just prefer to either rip one end or the other. But the page is always really awkward, so I just sealed it off in this one with some washi tape. That's actually really pretty. I also write a lot of quotes in my sketchbooks. So, be messy, life isn't about hospital corners. I think I'm a bit obsessive about things being perfect, which is what I like about these sketchbooks because they're far from perfect. And it's just nice to remind myself on the front page that things can be messy. I always leave my front pages empty usually because I always have this idea that I'm going to come back and like do them afterwards, but I never do. I usually don't, and this time I just decided, fuck it, I have this quote, I haven't really got that many pages left, I'll just put it on the front because it's a good reminder to myself. So obviously this here is Cruella de Vil. The Dalmatians, 101 Dalmatians came out in 1961, which is earlier than I thought it was, but I decided to paint Cruella de Vil's outfit, and this is acrylic paint. I think this is one of the only uses of acrylic paint in this sketchbook in particular, but I decided to do her, and I actually really love how the dress in itself in the actual animation has a blue shine on it, which kind of gives the thought to like silk. I think in my head that's always how I see it, and these like lovely drapey, like, I know she's evil, but she dresses she dresses so cool, and I'm jealous. But then I just decided to briefly come over an idea of if there was a modern version. So this was a take on if I was going to do it for like Halloween or something, and I wanted to transfer obviously the colour palette, the style, but make it more appropriate for me. So it's shorter, it's my haircut, it's red kind of loafer style shoes rather than heels because I'm not great in heels, and this jumpsuit is based on a jumpsuit that I actually own, so I just decided to stylize it in the actual style under the kind of premise that I would be wearing it if this was my Halloween outfit. I did a whole spread about cubes. I really like cubes. I did construction for 2 years, and I did woodwork for 4 years, so drawing things in kind of 3D scale is something I'm used to, but I decided to just kind of have a look at it in different ways, like through and like see-through and the shape plans and the different kind of layouts, different poses, different famous boxes, kind of how plans can be laid out, different views, different cutouts, different kind of if I wanted to make a model myself. And I used blue and orange, which are, I think it's orange and teal that are complementary colours, but I really like orange and blue together, so I decided to just do that. When I want to add colour to it, I'll just add complementary colours because I find them like just, they're actually are pleasing to the eye, so I'll just use them. Cubism, I'm very funny. I did a very quick 5-minute sketch challenge, so each portrait is done with different medias with no reference in 5 minutes each. They're not great. This one's pencil, markers. I'm not a huge portrait person. I've become more of a portrait person since I've done these drawings. I've drawn a lot of people recently, but at this time I wasn't really a portrait. Like, look at that looks like Jonathan from Stranger Things if he had a bigger forehead. Like, I'm not a huge person to draw people, but I'm trying to be better at that. I'm better than this currently, which I think is an improvement in 6 months. Mixed media, just some tape. I have this weird fascination with hands. I come back to it a lot. I think every sketchbook I own has some sort of hand study. This, I know that my current sketchbook has several hand studies already, but this is just different kind of views of hands. Hands, I have a love-hate relationship with them because I think they're one of the most interesting and beautiful things to draw, but they do my head in, and they frustrate me, and it just gets on my nerves. But then because I was doing hands, I just wanted to have a look at like palm reading. So I have all the different lines of the right hand. I'm pretty sure the left is the same and mirrored, but I just drew the right hand because I'm right-handed. And they have all the lines. It was also really fun to see what lines I had on my hands. So like different like seams, and not everyone has the same lines, which I think is a really interesting thing to know about. Like, these are the most prominent lines on my own hands. So seeing what can be there was really interesting. Yeah, some portraits. Like I said, I'm doing better at those. Green and black is a nice combo. I kind of do this kind of commentary on a lot of things and the pages beside, and I try and note things about myself as I'm drawing, because I think constructive criticism is good, and being able to criticize yourself constructively is also really good. So I find these are like almost as if I'm getting kind of pointers from someone who is outside of my own experience. An ear. I really like drawing ears. They're really weird and complicated, but they're really cool. Just a small kind of landscape thing. I like kind of having weird colours. Like, it looks kind of like Armageddon in a way. Then you just have this little house and the aliens are coming. I really like these weird scenes. They're very sketchy. I like sketchy as well. I think sketchy's really nice. This is kind of similar to something I've done before that I don't think I've posted, but it's basically like karst landscapes, if anyone who's done geography or geology or anything. Basically, the formations of kind of limestone, basically. Like, you have pillars, you have stalactites, you have stalagmites, but I did them in this cold colours. Whereas before I'd done them in warm colours. And the warm colours make it look really, like, volcanic, whereas the cold colours make it look very Arctic, which I liked, but I don't really like the way I've done this. I think that the pillars and stalactites are too thin. And the grey I don't think is contrasty enough, and it's wasting anyway, so. This is something, ooh, just like that out. This is something that I've done, and I did another version of this where I painted it on my leg, but I like this idea of someone being in space and looking back at the earth and thinking really existential shit. But just the idea that, like, everything seems really small and really insignificant, and I have a lot of existential dread, but doing things like this really helps me feel better. Sketches, waiting for Aaron. Every time we're in Starbucks I end up drawing a cup of some sort. This is when I was waiting for my interview for where I wanted to do my course, and in September, and just kind of this was what was sitting in front of me. We were next to the ladies' bathroom, and there was someone sitting kind of in front of the door, but like I think the chair was put there and she felt awkward. There was a bin, there was more chairs this way, and I was the only person sitting across the row from them because it was like a bookshelf. It was really weird. It wasn't a proper waiting area, that's the thing. This was something I started doing and then stopped and then realised there were so many mistakes, so I just gave up on it. I might come back to this idea because I like it, but I think I've written this actual quote a couple of times in this sketchbook. Some art isn't made to forever. That's why people are Jesus. Every time I look at it I find more mistakes. The actual quote is, some art isn't made to last forever, that's why people aren't immortal. Again, some more sketches from when I was at waiting for my interview. Some more sketches. Sappho, because I'm gay as shit. This isn't very accurate to the bust I was trying to replicate, but I think it's really pretty. And also I really like Sappho's poetry. I also really like this kind of motion. I do this a lot as well. This is in a lot of sketchbooks. But it's really calming to just go over and over and over again, which can be a great way to warm up for drawing for me. Spirals are also really good. Random portraits. Like I said, quotes. But someday you will be old enough to start reading fairy tales again. That's actually one of my quotes that I wrote down somewhere, and I just thought I should write it somewhere else. Daffodils, squiggles. Like I said, these kind of round things are really helpful. Tumbling out, screaming, lungs burning, righteous. It's okay that you're not who you thought you'd be. A lot of these affirmations are for myself, I think. Again, shapes. I really liked this page because I like this kind of shape, this kind of pose. I've done a version of this in my current sketchbook. I like these kind of looking up or kind of viewing from below. I like side profiles. I think crying is a really interesting thing to draw as well. Another hand, because I will always be hands bitch. My boy Steve, looking fucking awful. Just trying out some styles. It's kind of a very quick self-portrait. Another short poem that I wrote. When the world spits in your face or splits your lip or wakes you up shouting in the dead of night, I promise you I'm here. Hands. I can't get away from hands. Hands will probably always be the bane of my existence, but I'll also probably always love them in that weird kind of love-hate way. I started doing something in oil pastel, and then I remembered why I don't draw in oil pastel very often. I like oil pastel, but it's just a lot to get into sometimes. fairy tales are more than true, not because they tell us that dragons exist, but because they tell us that dragons can be beaten. Neil Gaiman. Some art isn't made to last forever, but that's why people aren't immortal. Like I said, this is like a quote that I try and live by, because I think a lot of people get really bogged down in the idea that some art has to be perfect, whereas like a lot of the great Renaissance artists, a lot of their works don't exist anymore. Like I don't think we have that many of Leonardo's works, and I know that like some really early artists, we just don't have a lot of their works anymore because they've been damaged or they've been lost or they're just somewhere that we don't know about. And I think that like some art isn't immortal. Like a lot of, like the Mona Lisa has been decaying for years, and we're trying very valiantly to keep her together, even though her process of cleaning her is very complicated. Some things just don't last, and I think that reminding myself of that is really important. My boys, my kids, I love Thor and Loki. They're two of my favourite Marvel characters. I've drawn a lot of Loki in my new sketchbook, some Thor, but I really like their objects and how very distinctly like they are to them. Like you see a horned helmet and you know Loki, you see a hammer and you know Thor. I just really love drawing from my interests. I did a really short and cute Bruce Thor comic based on talking to Alex, but I sent it to the incorrect Thor Bruce account and they loved it. It's really sweet. It's just, I just love them. Tony looks like fucking, what the fuck is that? Eyebrows, again, Thor. Ooh. Feel free to screenshot that and put whatever awful thing is happening ever in that place, because I know I did. That was the original reason I drew this drawing. Spirals. Awful sketches. I want to make and create like Guillermo del Toro. I want to imagine like him. Guillermo del Toro is a mastermind in my opinion. He's a filmmaker, and he I think directed Pan's Labyrinth and Shape of Water and all of these amazing, quirky, weird movies that are just so beautiful and so interesting, and I want to think the way he thinks about the world. Space Trooper. This was inspired by Miss Cracker's space look in one of the episodes of Drag Race Season 10. I can't remember what episode it was though. So this is a thing that I did that I really like. THEY/THEM. I like trying to put non-binary stuff into my sketchbooks because it kind of reminds me about kind of myself and who I am, and that my pronouns are valid and you should never feel bad about demanding respect, which is something that I really, really feel in general, but in this context specifically. This is a bit gory, but I really like the sketchy style of it. More hands. I did this while watching Taika Waititi's TED Talk, and he said, art, what is it? Is it important? I have no idea. Move on. So then in response I said to myself, art doesn't mean shit, and that's okay. Again, these kind of sketchy drawing things. Really like my man Bruce. I love Bruce Banner. He's one of my favorite He is my favorite Avenger. I drew this while watching, what's the movie called? Skyrise. No, it's not High Rise. It's a Tom Hiddleston movie. This is a drawing based on someone I used to know, and she's a bitch. I hate her. She was just such an awful person. I really love this idea, and I've actually noted good idea, poor execution. But I really love this idea of my heart is an open wound, but something about you plays to a different tune. I really like this idea of like what's it called, sheet music, it being written on sheet music, but then having some sort of like bleeding heart bleeding onto the sheet music to like show that it's bleeding. It's an open wound. I was trying for something a little bit more surreal here, and I think that plays out a little bit through the rest of the sketchbook, that I like these like really bright colors that don't really make sense. I also like weird faces. Those eyes, I like those eyes. They turned out really well, considering that I didn't like them at first. And because I drew Bruce, I had to draw my man Thor. I love Thor as well. He's one of my favorite Avengers. Language is inherently flawed. Make do. This is another thing I say a lot, to try and remind myself that some things are not concise. You can't say things easily. And language is inherently flawed. We do not have the words for everything. And in the languages that do have those words, there were missing words for other things. And in no combination can we ever really encompass the emotional experience of anyone. So I just like to tell myself that language is flawed. And that we have to make do with what we have, because it really helps me be able to see the world better. This is how I feel about drawing hands, even though I love hands. I'm ranking all the Marvel movies because I want to make a video where I give you my ranking, but this isn't appropriate for me. I can also name all the Marvel movies and their years without looking, which is just, it's weird. Why am I like this? I have a lot of Van Gogh quotes in my sketchbooks. There's one that's not in this sketchbook that's in every other sketchbook, that normality is a paved road. It is comfortable to walk, but no flowers grow, which is actually something I really like. I'd actually get that tattooed if I could. This is really reminiscent of wood grain, as you can see around. This is lino actually, but I have a lot of quotes towards the end because I wanted to fill up space, really, because I don't like leaving things like really empty. I really love this one. Courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the judgment that something is more important than fear. The brave may not live forever, but the cautious do not live at all. That's from the Princess Diaries. I really love this quote. Love this one as well, but it's long and it's kind of complicated to read, or at least it is for me. This is a Doctor Who quote. I really love Doctor Who. I need to come back to it. And here's the thing that really encompasses the mood of me through all of the time I was doing this sketchbook for the last 6 months of secondary school. Fucky, and then you get interrupted by some sort of surrealist something or other that I didn't like, and then something else that was really surreal that I don't understand. I like this because people's interpretations were really interesting. So if you want to tell me what this is about, then feel free. OU, exclamation mark, commas. And that's the end of the sketchbook, really. I try and keep papers in the back of my sketchbook to slide in if I'm using markers that bleed a lot, because I don't really like it when they bleed into other pages because it just annoys me and frustrates me. So I try and leave them in the back. And that is my 11th sketchbook. I have done one sketchbook video before this, I think, where I bring you through it, but I'm not really happy with that video, so I'll probably, like, redo that video. But this is my 11th one, and I plan to go backwards and add all the sketchbooks over time. And it's really nice to have a catalogue of them, just to be able to see what I've done and what I'm proud of, and all of the amazing things. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hopefully I will see you tomorrow. Happy veju, and goodbye. Or, wait. Goodbye. I can't do the thing where I do that, so I'm just gonna fade to black. Ooh.